you got to think about building your business in a way that it's sustainable
Yeah.
and can actually function without being entirely dependent on one person.
Well, yeah, because
You
there's a
know?
lot of responsibility. And even if you're very multi-talented, like you
Mhm.
don't want that.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Only Exit. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is our very first episode. We're excited that you're here. If you're listening to this, then you're probably a brand new listener. So just want to take a moment and welcome those of you who are brand new to the Only Exit podcast and podcast community. I'm Caleb. I'm one of your co-hosts, and here in the studio is Aaron as well. Aaron's a co-host. Aaron, why don't you introduce yourself, man?
Yeah. Hey, what's up, guys? We're really excited about this podcast. My name's Aaron Leatherdale. I've been an entrepreneur for most of my life, ever since I was a teenager, thinking of different ideas, business ideas, different industries, real estate mostly. But yeah, just really excited about this podcast, Only Exit. We're going to be bringing a lot of different entrepreneurs on here, weekly episodes, just from a variety of industries, just to get excited, refine each other, learn new skills, get inspired. And so we're super excited.
Yeah. So Aaron, what is Only Exit, right? Because there's a lot of entrepreneur podcasts, right? A lot of mindset stuff. I mean, you and I both listen to a lot of podcasts. We're both
Right.
big fans of guys like Alex Hormozy and Jocko and
Sure.
Grant Cardone and like all these guys, right? And they all bring great value to entrepreneurs who are out there hustling, grinding, building businesses, right?
Yeah.
So what makes Only Exit different than those podcasts?
Yeah. Like you said, there's tons of podcasts out there, business podcasts, leadership, mindset. But I think, so the idea of Own the Exit is basically, it's like Stephen Covey says in his book, begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
So when you're starting a business, it's so easy to just, you're so focused, and you're just trying to make it successful. You're not necessarily thinking about the exit. And so I think Own the Exit is basically defining that exit. And maybe it's vague at first and you don't know fully what it's going to look like, but thinking about like, okay, I'm starting a business, but I don't want to become enslaved to that.
Yeah.
And it's the idea of like working
sure.
on your business versus working in it.
Yeah.
And I think it's so easy to, especially as new entrepreneurs, just to become so kind of intertwined in the business based on the founder's vision, the founder's skill set, the founder's, motivation level and drive and hours that the founder puts in to where it just becomes like a very demanding job that, I know entrepreneurs that haven't taken a vacation in like a couple of years.
Totally.
And so I think the idea of this podcast is just to start thinking wherever you're at in business of being able to like use your business as a servant to then usher you into that lifestyle that you desire and that freedom that you desire. That's probably why you started a business in the first place.
Yeah.
So
I think about that, man. I think most entrepreneurs, right, they don't want to clock into a 40-hour-a-week job, even if that job pays really well.
Yeah.
And, what your joke, right? Like the 80 hours.
Oh, the joke. Yeah. The entrepreneur is the only person that'll work 80 hours a week so they don't have to work 40.
Yeah. For somebody else. Right? Exactly. So what would motivate us kind of crazy, weird, 10% of the population people to be willing to work harder and more hours, take on more stress and
sometimes
pressure.
for no pay for long periods of time.
Exactly. The whole idea is freedom.
Yeah.
The whole purpose of I think the thread that kind of holds every entrepreneur together, right? The common thread is the desire for freedom.
Yeah.
And the belief that we can actually achieve it.
Yeah.
We have that
time
that
freedom,
capacity.
financial freedom, even location freedom.
100%. Being able to go where you want, live the life that you desire, live a lifestyle by design, right?
Yeah.
Value the things that are most important. But what I think happens is even though we all kind of set out in the entrepreneurial world with that as our intention, what we end up doing is we go out and we focus so much on the build, right? We're building this thing and it's like we're building a house from the inside. And we end up we finally see that we've built the house and we're like, oh crap, I forgot to put a door in and I can't get out.
Right.
Like I can't, how do I get in and out of this house? Because it's so built around your skill set.
Well, you can't even sell that house.
Right.
Because, a lot of times, even when talking with other entrepreneurs, what they've created only has value because of in that it's tied to them. And like, if you remove them, it doesn't work.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
and so no, that's a good idea. And just another point too on your exit is, you know, we've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs. It's not always I can't wait to retire.
Hmm.
That was me. Actually, I was like, I'm going to buy a bunch of rental properties so I can be a millionaire at age 30 and retire and never have to work again.
Yeah.
But as time went by, I realized I built up a lot of rental properties, and I realized I don't want to just not work.
Yeah.
You know, especially as you go along and you gain skills, maybe you can add value to people in ways, or to society, or to continue growing and finding that
Yeah.
fulfillment. I think sometimes own the exit is really just, it's not, I'm going to exit, not work.
Exactly.
It's I'm going to be able to craft my business and craft my lifestyle so that the work I'm doing
Yeah.
is meaningful work. It's work that I feel like I'm called to do. It's work
Mhm.
that I feel like I'm hopefully good at. And then just being able to do that.
Right. Because the door works both ways. It allows you to go out, but it allows you to come in. And that's ultimately the dream is not necessarily, like you said, selling your business, leaving, totally exiting, selling it off to
Mhm.
someone else. Sometimes that is the dream. Sometimes that's the
Sometimes
dream exit, right? For
somebody
some
offers
entrepreneurs,
you a huge
yeah,
check.
they just want to, you just want to build a big
Yeah.
business and say, okay, now I can just sell it to someone else, completely be done with it, wash my hands of it.
Mhm.
But a lot of entrepreneurs, I mean, I know a lot of guys who, even after they sold it, there's like almost like a period of mourning
Yeah.
because they realize, like, that was my baby. I
Now
built
what?
that thing. And now they're like going, like, my
Mhm.
brother-in-law, who we're going to interview, built a hugely successful restaurant, right?
Right.
And he just recently sold it. That was his
Mhm.
exit. He sold it. And now he's like going there like every other day just to
Uh-huh.
like say hi, because he's like,
That's funny.
even though he hated it when he was there because it was consuming his life, it's like,
Yeah.
this was my baby for so long, for over
Right.
a decade. I
Yeah.
built this thing. And
Uh-huh.
he's like, it's kind of like the dad who just, shows up on the college campus where he left his,
Yeah.
it's like, I know, like, my job was to get you ready to be able to do this, but like, I just
Uh-huh.
want to like come and admire my work?
Yeah.
And so some entrepreneurs, they, like you said, they don't want to leave their business because their
Mhm.
business is a big part of them. It's what
Yeah.
it's the produce of what they created. And so own the exit is not about telling entrepreneurs how they're supposed to define their exit. It's
Mhm.
about saying
It's
it's
about
your
thinking about it.
right, it's your
Yeah.
business. You get to define what an
Mhm.
exit looks like to you.
Yeah.
We just want to inspire entrepreneurs and encourage entrepreneurs and equip entrepreneurs with the skills that they need to
Mhm.
be able to
Mhm.
build an exit within their
Yeah.
business that allows them to come and go and their business doesn't fall apart as a result.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, well, Aaron, why don't you share a little bit, just so I'd love for our listeners to be able to get to know us a little bit, because we're kind of going to be guiding them in this journey, right? And so,
Right.
why don't you share a little bit about how you actually got into entrepreneurship and building businesses, and just a
Mhm.
little bit of your background, and then I'll do the same.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I grew up in British Columbia, Canada. So I moved to Kansas City over 12 years ago. So I've been here for a while now. But yeah, just always as a teenager, read a few business books. I don't know
Yeah.
why. I just had that chip inside of me, I guess, for entrepreneurship. I wanted to buy a bunch of rental properties, and I didn't know anything about cash flow
Yeah.
or any, it wasn't even about that. I just thought, hey, if I get these, someone else will pay them off. And when I'm 35 years old, I'll be a millionaire.
Yeah.
That was how simple my thinking was. I didn't know anything about like managing them, or,
Yeah.
I figured even if they are worth half the price that I pay for them,
Hmm.
someone else is going to pay them off,
Right.
and I'll at least have 500,000,
Right.
or whatever the number is. But so I kind of started down that path of like, okay, what steps do I need to take to buy real estate? And so I ended up getting a job at a industrial plant. So this is like a, W-2 job. I actually had to drive out for 5 months. I drove out to that plant. It was it was a sawmill, 2 times a week, handed my resume for 5 months. And I
Wow.
just said, hey, I'm here again. Just persistence.
Yeah.
After 5 months, I got the job. I actually got hired.
Wow.
It was a union job. It was pretty hard to get the job, but it was really good pay and a
Mhm.
good salary. And it was also a good, like, established company. So
Yeah.
it's great for banks.
Yeah.
I had the good credit. Banks, it was easy to get a loan back in 2005s,
Yeah.
2007,
Yeah.
but I didn't have the job piece.
Yeah.
So that was my strategy of kind of getting into, real estate. And, that job, it was funny because even as all those days and weeks driving out to get that job, I was already planning my exit from that job.
Yeah.
it wasn't about getting the biweekly paycheck.
Totally.
It wasn't about, hey, I'm going to make a career out of this. It was, hey, I'm going to do this job for a year because that's how long I need to be working to get a mortgage.
Mhm.
So I ended up buying, around 10 houses during that time,
Yeah.
and then kind of put in my 2 weeks notice. And
Yeah.
during that time at the job, I worked really hard and got compensated and tried to be a good employee and got promoted to like a
Sure.
management position and everything. And
Yeah.
the coworkers were like, "Why'd you quit this job?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, this job was strategic in the sense of like, it was just another step in my entrepreneur journey."
Right.
And I think sometimes people like hate on, W-2 jobs and stuff, but I totally don't think that at all. I
Yeah.
think that they can be very strategic, and maybe you're working a job for 20 years that you find fulfillment in, and that
Mhm.
you're generating finances from, that you can then invest in other assets or different things. But again, it all just comes down to like being strategic. Like, what's the plan here?
Yeah.
Like having an exit and just thinking through those steps of like, hey, I want to be here in 2 years, here in 5, here in
Yeah.
10. What's that going to look like? And then just kind of working backwards.
Yeah.
And that's a little
Yeah.
bit about how I bought my first fourplex. I had 22 years old, and I think I paid $165,000 for it. And I felt really high at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It probably was pretty high at that time.
and I
right?
didn't know anything. I actually called my pastor of all people, like,
Yeah,
hey, should I
yeah.
buy this? And
Yeah.
he was like, yeah, totally, man. So I bought it.
That's awesome.
And then, I was up in Canada a couple months ago, actually, and the fourplexes on that street are going for about 700,000 now. So
Wow.
just shows the power of, leverage of holding that.
Yeah.
But the real estate just kind of got me thinking more along business. And then,
Yeah.
from there, I spun off into some other businesses, advertising companies, some other different ventures.
Mhm.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
it's been good.
Yeah, I love specifically what you said. It's like every step needs to be strategic, right? And thinking with the end in mind allows you to strategize in the right way, which is exactly what you
Yeah.
did. Because it would have been real easy for you to just stay at that job,
Yeah.
but you had a plan. You were being strategic. You started with
Mhm.
the end in mind, and so you didn't get stuck in what could have just become kind of the feeling of like a dead end job. And I've just got good benefits and I'm making good money, so I'm just going to
Mhm.
stay here, even though I don't really love it. Like that kind of
That's
thing.
that's how a lot of people were at that job.
Exactly.
Even though they're making, 70, 80,000, 100,000 a year, full
Yeah.
benefits, but hating it.
Yeah.
But I never hated it.
Yeah.
I was like, this is great.
So
It
they're
just is the next step.
right. And they're just, a lot of folks just kind of surrender to selling their time for money. And they're like,
Mhm.
I'm selling my time, so it doesn't really matter what I do during that because
Yeah.
it's not mine anymore. Right. And it's like,
Mhm.
I don't want to live that way. And I kind of figured that out. I'll just share a little bit of my entrepreneurial journey. I kind of figured that out. I counted a blessing. I figured that out at a pretty early age, age 11, to be
Right.
honest with you. Like, so here's kind of what happened.
Like, I don't want to work for anybody else. I'm
Yeah, no,
no.
I'm 11. I'm not going to be anyone's slave. No, I mean, it's really kind of funny though. My grandfather, my late grandfather, he worked as a welder, a pipe welder for a big power company on the
Yeah.
East Coast, right? And he contracted asbestosis from working in power plants that had asbestos, right? And so
Mhm.
there's a big class action settlement, and he got a little bit of a settlement.
Mhm.
It wasn't a small amount, it wasn't like life-changing money, but
Mhm.
it was a chunk of money for him as a pipe welder, right?
Right.
And so a couple things that he did, he was able to kind of pay off his house. And then one of the things that he had always wanted to do, was take our entire family on a whole family vacation. We're in like a big house in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I'm from North Carolina,
Nice.
right? So the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and we, aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody in one big house right on the beach for a week, right?
Uh-huh.
We get there the first night, and it was the first time we'd been able to do anything like this. Like, this was awesome, right? This big, beautiful house and hot tub and pool and beach and all the stuff, right? Like, I
Sweet.
didn't grow up like that. This was like, oh, I feel like a rock star now. But we get there, and the first night he gets everyone together kind of in the main like living room area. And he says, I want everyone to be able to have a great time. I've never been able to do this for everyone before, and I may not ever be able to again. And so I want everyone to enjoy this. And so he goes around and he hands all of the kids $100 bill. And he's like, go, like, do the things you want, have fun, spend,
Yeah.
like all this kind of stuff. And I was like, I'm rich, 11 years
Totally.
old, I'm rich, I've got $100 bill. But then I started thinking about all the things I wanted to do, and I realized it was going to be more than $100. And so The next morning, we go to this indoor flea market. We're walking around, and there's this lady who's selling all kinds of little knickknacks, and there's a box of seashell necklaces. At the time, they were really popular amongst kids and preteens, right? The little seashell necklaces.
Yeah. I remember those.
Yeah, it was like everybody had them, and so she had a box of them there. She was selling them for like $2 or $3 each, and there was like 10 of them in the box. And I asked the lady, little entrepreneurial 11-year-old Caleb goes up to the lady and says, "Hey, if I buy all of these seashell necklaces and you don't have to worry about selling them for the rest of the day, I'll buy all of them right now. Will you take $10 for them?" And she smiles at me. She was probably a 60-year-old lady. She smiles at me and she's like, "For you, son, I'll do that." And so I bought all 10 seashell necklaces.
Right.
I knew that kids my age liked them, right? And so then I thought, okay, my grandparents go on vacation every year. They've never been able to take all of us. And they always bring us back souvenirs because while they're on vacation, they're thinking about their grandkids.
Right.
Right. And so I'm sure there's a lot of other grandparents that are like that. And so I go up and down the beach looking for older couples that are there by themselves that I just assume probably have grandkids.
Nice.
Right. And I take these seashell necklaces, I put them up my arm like I'm in some Caribbean
Like
hustler.
Watch guy, with a trench coat.
Exactly. Put them up my arm, trying to look the part, But I walk up and I always approach the old lady because to me, the ladies were more approachable typically, right?
Sure.
And so I walked up to this lady, the first lady, and I said something to the effect of, "Hey, my name's Caleb. I'm here with my family. I've never been able to do this before. This is my first time in the Outer Banks. And my grandpa gave me $100 and I realized I wanted to do more than $100 worth of stuff. And so I'm selling seashell necklaces. Now
Right.
you can buy these in souvenir shops all over the island for $5 each, or you can stay right here in your beach chair and get these for your grandkids. And I know they'll like them because I'm their age."
You're 11.
I'm 11, right. You can get them from me for 10.
That's a good script.
Hey, and I was like, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
I was just being honest and authentic and genuine.
Yeah.
And this lady smiles at me and she says, "I've got 3 grandkids. They're all close to your age. I'll take 3 of them." And she gets a 20 and a 10 out of her purse and hands it to me. And I'm like, this is easy.
Yeah.
Why would anybody ever work for an hourly pay when you can just do this, And so that was within 30 minutes, I'd sold out of all of my necklaces. And I was like, the next day, I'm like, I need to find some more necklaces. I didn't know.
$100.
Exactly. I doubled my money. I doubled the money that I had in 30 minutes. And I ended up taking about $50 of that, keeping about $50 of it. I spent about $150 at the beach, right? Doing all the fun things I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then I took about $50 and took it back with me. And we had an old beat up push lawnmower that had been sitting under the shed at our house for a long time. And I asked my dad, I said, "Dad, how much would it take to get that lawnmower running?" And he said, "Well, it needs a new carburetor, new spark plug, whatever." And I said, "Well, if I pay for this stuff, would you teach me how to fix it?" And it was like $9 to buy the stuff to fix it, right?
Yeah.
And so my dad takes me to the store, we buy it, we fix it, we get it running. My mom worked at a local newspaper. So I tell my mom, "Hey, will you run a classified ad?" Right. And she helped me with the idea because she knew what I was trying to figure out how to do. So anyway, long story short, I started a landscaping company.
Yeah.
I just put a classified ad with a lawnmower and I said, 11-year-old boy looking for a summer job. That's what it said. And I got call after call after call. And guess who it was from? People in a retirement community.
Gotcha.
So it was older folks. And so I started to realize, one, building a business, this is what I learned as an 11-year-old entrepreneur was first I had to identify a product or a service that I understood, something that I knew something about. Seashell necklaces and cutting grass. That was basically the only things I knew at that time, other than the toys that I play with and WWE wrestling that I was really into.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have to identify who's your client, who's the person that will get what you want, who's your dream client. For me, it just happened to be older couples, right?
Yeah.
Because they saw me the way they saw their grandkids, which leads to the next thing. I confidently craft my offer to them and it makes them feel good about doing business with me rather than someone else.
Yeah.
They would pay me to cut their grass before they would pay the local landscaping company, the big guy, because they felt like they were helping someone that was like their grandson, right? A young kid who's up and coming, who's willing to work hard. And that landscaping company grew to a pretty successful business that I ended up exiting when I was 26 years old. So I literally, 17 years.
Wow.
No, 15 years.
15.
15 years. Yeah.
15 years.
I had
you
that
had
business
employees and everything.
Yeah, I grew it to Now, while I was a teenager, I would have a couple of buddies that would help me, that kind of stuff in the summer and all of that. And it wasn't always a full-time gig, sometimes it was, I would just work Saturdays and a couple afternoons a week or whatever.
Right.
But then when I ended up graduating high school and doing some college and all that kind of stuff, I still operated the business, and even other ventures that I had this business that I was always able to build and always able to go back to. And then it eventually just became the thing that kind of vaulted and
But those principles, I mean, that's super cool that you, as an 11-year-old, had that
yeah.
intuition.
Yeah.
And then it's just seashells, right? But it's the same principles that apply
100%.
to the other things you've got into. So
Yeah.
That's really cool, man.
Yeah. So now, Aaron, what do you think if you were to start over as an entrepreneur and knowing what you know now about thinking about the exit, what are some things that you would tell our listeners would be absolutely critical and important to them building an exit into their business?
Yeah. I think when you just start a business, you're not necessarily dwelling on that. I feel like a lot of times, for me anyways, that develops because at the beginning, you don't even know if it's going to be successful. And that's how any business venture I've always got into. And when the people I'm working with, I'm like, this whole thing could just not even work. That's just how I approach it, even though I know it will.
Yeah.
As you have that inside of you, that inner voice that says that this is going to be a success.
Totally.
But 80% of businesses, I think, fail in the first 2 years and like 95 in the first like 4. So 1 out of 20 people that start a business today won't be in business 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Or only 1 out of 20 will be. 19 won't be.
Yeah.
And so there's always that reality. But I think also like there's that initial phase where you just got to go all in. And then you got to get it to a point where then you can kind of plan the exit.
Right.
That's what I feel like. I mean, to just get it to that point where now you can kind of see like, okay, I have something now.
Yeah.
That then I can start mapping out how I'm going to separate myself from it.
Yeah.
But at first, I think when you're the one starting it, a lot of times it is intertwined with the founder.
Yeah. And it kind of has to be that way. I think, my thoughts, I mean, that's 100% true. It's like sometimes when you're starting, when you're brand new, you have to, you've got to go all in, right? You have to
can't hire somebody necessarily to do that.
Right.
You just have to do it.
They're not going to have the same passion.
You got to do the work. You got to be willing to work for free. You got to be willing to work weird hours, whatever it takes. And you have to just keep fighting back until you get to that point where it's like, okay, now I can, and maybe you have that. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself. Maybe you still have that vague exit, but it's not super defined maybe at first. But then as that business starts to materialize and starts to take shape and starts to be successful and get past a few hurdles, and then you start bringing people on and team members, and then you can start to see that, and then you can start to more like map out that exit.
Yeah, and I think, and I know we've talked enough about this to know that you probably agree is that systems are such a big part of being able to build an exit, like focusing on building systems, because
absolutely,
like what you said, I know this to be true. Like 1 out of every 10 like mom and pop restaurants that start, right? Like new restaurant ventures that start, 1 out of every 10 are successful. 9 out of 10 fail within the first 2 years.
Sounds about right, which is crazy.
Right.
Because they all of them just went.
All of them went in.
All of them went in hard.
And the thing is that all of them can make a better burger than McDonald's can. But McDonald's, 9 out of every 10 succeed. Only 10% of them fail. Why? Because McDonald's has refined systems, right? Ray Kroc, he was a salesman of ice cream machines, right? Sundays and milkshakes. That's what I'm trying to say. Milkshake. Right. And he walks into the very first McDonald's restaurant to sell them a milkshake machine, sees how impressive their work ethic, how quickly they got the food made, all that kind of stuff. And he sells them on the idea of a franchise model where they take what they just did naturally and turn it into defined systems. And now that business model works with or without the McDonald's brothers or with or without Ray Kroc. It works for any operator who will just plug into and follow the system. And so if you want to be able to have a business that operates with or without you, then you have to build systems that allow for that business to operate with or without you, right?
That's why franchises are so successful and why it costs so much money to buy into one with ongoing franchise fees anywhere from $250,000 to millions to buy that franchise because they've done all the blood, sweat, and tears and they just tell you, hey, your pen needs to be blue. You need to have 2 of them. They go in this slot,
Yeah.
and you don't have to figure all that out. You just
Totally.
operate.
Totally.
So
I think owning the exit, one of the first most critical things, and maybe this can be a takeaway from this initial episode, is when you almost have to, as a business owner, you have to think like an entrepreneur, but you also have to think like an investor,
Mm.
and you also have to think like a franchisee,
yeah,
right? Or a franchiser. So you have to think like an entrepreneur in
Uh-huh.
that you do have to hustle, you do have to go hard, you do have to go all in, but you got to think like an investor too, because an investor is not probably going to invest in a company that relies solely on one individual's ability to perform.
Mhm.
Because then what if that
Yeah.
person dies? What if that person steps down? What if that person leaves? Then their investment is falling apart. So you got to think about building your business in a way that it's sustainable
Yeah.
and can actually function without being entirely dependent on one person.
Well, yeah, because
You
there's a
know?
lot of responsibility. And even if you're very multi-talented, like you
Mhm.
don't want that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you think about if Elon Musk were to step down from Tesla today, what would happen to their stock price?
Right.
It would go down
Well,
significantly.
like Twitter, he couldn't find somebody to
Mhm.
step in, right?
Yeah. So he has to do it.
Yeah, he's like sleeping on the couch and
Yeah.
at night, like 18-hour days, right?
He's built different than most of us.
Yeah, he did.
Let's be honest.
But like you said, people and process, I think, are the 2
Yeah.
things. Like the construction company that I built and I'm still building, it's not about profit.
Totally.
We're not dwelling
Totally.
on how much money we're going to make. We're
Yeah.
dwelling on great people,
Mhm.
a great team, investing in those people, and then refined processes, our trackers, our cash management, the way we communicate. The money part, I feel like, is a byproduct of that.
Mhm. Yeah.
As we have
Absolutely.
those things refined. And it's kind of what you
Yeah.
said with franchises and stuff,
Yeah.
just having those systems.
Yeah. 100%. Well, we're getting to the end of the episode
Okay, yeah.
today. So we are excited. We've got a ton of really cool guests that we've already interviewed and more that are lining up. We literally have tons of high-level business owners and
Mhm.
entrepreneurs that are lining up to get on to interview for our podcast.
Yeah, it's
It's
awesome.
really cool.
Mhm.
I thought we were going to have a hard time finding guests, and it turns out that people are like excited to jump on a podcast like this because nobody else is talking really about this stuff, you know, in this
and it's
way.
fun.
And it's fun. It is fun.
Mhm.
And we're cool guys and people like to talk to us and we like to talk to them. So
Yeah.
it's pretty awesome. But we do a couple of the, people that we've got coming up even early on that we've already interviewed. We got a guy who literally owns a Guinness World Record.
Mhm.
He's a successful media company owner, has a doctorate degree in social media, in Facebook and Twitter, which is, I didn't even know that existed, but apparently it does.
He's the one guy that did it.
I know. And he owns a Guinness
Uh-huh.
World Record for running the most consecutive marathons. And so he ran literally a marathon a day, every day for 153 consecutive
Yeah.
days and broke the Guinness
Rain or
World
shine,
Record. Shattered.
sickness, health, didn't matter.
Yep, absolutely.
Thanksgiving.
Throwing up, Thanksgiving Day, all that stuff. And so we talked to him about that. We've also got a guy that's coming on the podcast. It's a first generation Hispanic American, was born of an immigrant family
Mhm.
and has achieved remarkable success, specifically in the real estate industry and mobile home
Mhm.
parks. And so we're excited to talk to him. And then we've got a founder of a stage film production company, right, that
Mhm.
we interviewed that has literally touched people all
Mhm.
across the world. Their productions have.
Just a lot of people, a lot of industries, a lot of exciting stories,
Yeah. And the
different journeys.
common thread is the desire for freedom and impact.
Yeah.
Every single one of these people, freedom and impact.
Mhm.
Live a lifestyle by design, live a life of financial freedom and time freedom, and make a positive impact, starting like with your family. You know, family is such a big part of what we're going to talk about as well. And
It is.
so yeah, we're excited. Any closing words for our listeners here on episode number one of Own the Exit? Let's go.
No, just closing words are we're super excited and hope to add value, and I think even in addition to entrepreneurs, bringing other people on too that can help with stuff Caleb was mentioning, like advisors and consultants, whether it's tax
Yeah.
people, attorneys, different people, just so that you can not only be excited and inspired like on your own journey, but just there's commonalities that we all
Mhm.
share too as entrepreneurs, doesn't matter what industry.
Yeah.
A lot of, principles that are the same. And so like that's really one of our goals too, is just like add value however we can
Yeah.
to the listener. So and super excited
100%.
about this and just look forward
Yeah.
to more episodes.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a brand new podcast. If you're listening to this, we just got started. And so It would be tremendous for us if you could leave us a review. Let us know what you think. Give us some feedback. Share it with other entrepreneurs that you know that would benefit from listening to the podcast. Share it with somebody. And until next time, we wish you all the best. Thanks for listening to Own the Exit.
Thanks, guys.